We're going to call this June 17th meeting of the DRB to order. And before going too much further, Meredith's going to talk about our remote meeting procedures, and then we'll get going.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see if I've tweaked this enough so I don't have to get up again and go play with the projector. All right, there we go. So for anyone viewing tonight's Development Review Board meeting over ORCA Media, you can participate in the discussion via the Zoom platform through either video or telephone access options. If you want the full video experience, you can type this link into your web browser, and I will get a little notification that you want to get into the meeting, and I'll let you in. Alternatively, you can dial in using this phone number here. And when prompted, put in this meeting ID. And again, I'll get a notification that you want to get into the meeting. If anyone is trying to get in and having problems accessing the meeting, please email me at mcrandall@montpelier-vt.org. I will be monitoring my email throughout the meeting. For those attending via Zoom, turning your video on is optional. And if you start having issues with lag and stuff, actually turning your video off can often make the sound quality much, much better. For everyone attending, please keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. This will help reduce background noise. And if you do wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait to speak until the chair has called on you. And the first time that you're called on, please make sure to state your full name and either affiliation if you're here representing a application or your address if you're a member of the public providing comments. Please reserve the Zoom chat function for troubleshooting or logistics questions only. Questions or comments about an item on the agenda should be dealt with verbally by raising your hand and then waiting to be called on. If the public is unable to access tonight's meeting, and I would get notification of that via my email, it will need to be continued to a time and place certain. I will now hand the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Meredith. So I'll just reiterate, we don't have too many members of the public on, but we expect everyone on their utmost behavior at this meeting. Any questions come straight to the chair, and then we'll direct it where it needs to go. If we have issues with people overrunning and talking too much or unruly, we'll end this meeting and continue it to a time and place certain to try again. That's our move. I don't expect to have any of those issues this evening, but we're just keeping it standard here. So obviously Sharon is no longer, or she's here. She's not here this evening at this application. So I'm Rob, the vice chair, be filling in this evening, and introduce board members here, starting.
Meredith Crandall, staff.
Rob Goodwin, chair, vice chair.
Last member.
Catherine Burgess, member.
And
Joe Kiernan, board member.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. So we will make one swap here, given that the Vine Street applicants don't appear to be here yet. So I would accept a motion for the approve the agenda with that swap of Vine Street and Berlin Street.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion by Alex, second by Catherine. All those in favor?
Aye.
All righty. We have an agenda, and I guess we'll start with the Berlin Street applications. So you all can come on up.
And yet don't forget to speak into the microphone as best you can so that our minute taker can take appropriate minutes and so everybody remotely can hear you.
Okay, great. So the Martin Quadros and Susan Quadros were here for the application for the Duncan project. I'm going to have my civil engineer, Jeff, go over it and present it.
Wonderful. Okay. So before we get too far, we are going to swear anyone in that will be testifying on this application this evening. Who do we have online? Is it just Jeff or anyone else?
We have somebody from Lajeunesse as well.
Yeah, this is Michael Lejeunesse.
All righty. So we got two on the Zoom platform and two in the room. So those interested in providing testimony in this application, would you please raise your right hand to be sworn as a witness? Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I will. I do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Meredith, you want to start or you want to have Jeff start? What would you prefer?
I can do just a quick little procedural thing.
Right.
So normally this application would just be approved administratively. I would handle probably helping, going back and forth with Department of Public Works on certain items. And the administrative permit wouldn't necessarily be conditioned. It's just that I wouldn't issue it until the applicant and DPW agreed on some of the finer points in here. Same with like stuff about some of the trees, things like that. But there's the waiver for a loading zone location, so that had to come to the DRB. So some of that back and forth is just noted as red text in here, where ultimately the board needs to make the decision based on the comments that came in from DPW and how the applicant feels about those comments. So there might be more conditions on the permit that you guys would approve than I would do, but it still works out to be about the same situation, except for that loading zone area.
Wonderful. Thank you, Meredith. Any procedural questions before we start getting forward? Okay. We'll turn it over to the applicant. You feel free to have Jeff talk or you
Okay,
talk,
yeah,
however you
yeah.
want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm happy to chime in here. So just for the record, my name is Jeff Oleski with Catamount Consulting Engineers, the civil engineer for the project. And what we're looking at here is, for those of you familiar with the Dunkin' Donuts property, and I know Meredith's usually pretty good about pulling up some plans. We can kind of talk through this. I'll just give a really quick overview because I think there's just kind of a couple of sticking points to go over with the board, but I'll give an overview of what the project involves. But the existing Dunkin' Donuts facility on Berlin Street or Route 2 currently has an existing entrance and exit split by kind of a small brick median, so to speak. And it does have a drive-through component to it with vehicles entering the site and working in a counterclockwise fashion around that building and then exiting out the other side. It's certainly a small lot. The existing property is just over a half acre. So it's pretty narrow and not overly deep. And so there's certainly some physical limitations associated with that property. And there have been, which this application is really seeking to improve upon. The primary one being that there's really a lack of queuing space for drive-through vehicles on this property for the drive-through component, and that sometimes cause congestion both on site with parked vehicles and pedestrians, as well as sometimes under busier hours in the morning and evening, bleed out and cause traffic to sometimes queue out onto Route 2. And so recently, the property to the south, which was the previous auto repair shop, and the specific numbers are I'm not sure. I think it was 57 and 59 Berlin Street was that property to the south. But ultimately, it came up for sale. And so DeMartin's got a contract to purchase that property contingent on permitting. And so we have recently filed an amendment application with Meredith to merge these two parcels into one property with the intent of raising and removing that existing building. So as Meredith pulls up here, that's the auto repair shop building to the south on the bottom portion of the property. That larger rectangle on the north side is the existing Dunkin' Donuts. And so really what we're looking to do is again, remove that existing auto repair shop building and then take what in my opinion is kind of three existing curb cuts on Route 2 and reduce them down to a single curb cut and provide a lot more queuing space on the properties in total once the project's all said and done. So as Meredith scrolls down here, what you're looking at is the kind of an overall proposed site plan where the new curb cut would be a kind of traditional AOT 30-foot wide commercial curb cut on the south side of the two combined properties. We would have one entrance in where Meredith is pointing now, and then there'd actually be two exit lanes, one to the left and right. And then the curb cut that was on the north side of this property, or the auto repair shop, would be closed off and revegetated, which is the area Meredith's highlighting there, as well as the existing curb cut that serves the Dunkin' Donuts now would also be reclaimed and cut off, so that ultimately we'd be reducing the amount of the access points out onto the roadway, which obviously will benefit the flow of traffic and pedestrian and vehicular safety on Route 2 in general. But then the other benefit now is with vehicles entering on the south side of the properties, combined properties, they'll pretty much have that whole frontage now to kind of queue there. And as they get to the drive-through, which is exactly right where Meredith's pointing now, that's where you order from. Currently, we're not proposing any changes to the building. That area she's circling now is where you actually pick up your coffee or food. And so we're not proposing any changes to the functionality or the circulation around that Dunkin' Donuts. We're just trying to reconfigure the parking, reconfiguring the access, and providing more queuing space. And I think generally everybody's acknowledged it is certainly, although not perfect still, given the lack of depth we have in this property, and kind of understanding what to work with the existing building and the way it's laid out internally and whatnot, is still a pretty good benefit. As Meredith alluded to, I think the main reason we're in front of the DRB tonight is for this loading area that she's highlighting right now. And so the intent is where we have the curb cut, the existing curb cut, more or less keeping a part of that paved and hatching that off, and designating a kind of a loading spot. And the way, and there are, I will acknowledge there's some larger trucks, tractor trailers that do come in for deliveries to this site. So we need to make an attempt to still try to accommodate that. And what happens now, as I understand it, is that the tractor trailers kind of just pull into the entrance and up along the south side of the building and kind of just block traffic in kind of all directions and kind of get in and out of there as soon as they can. But that also causes some congestion on property, as well as some complications at the entrance and exit of the facility. And so what we're trying to do is designate an area on property where tractor trailers can, or larger delivery trucks can pull into the site, pull over, get out of everybody's way, do their loading and unloading. And then for larger, just kind of standard box trucks, we would imagine that they would kind of do a 3-point turn where they'd back out there, and then just pull back out the way they normally would. For very large tractor trailers, we kind of envision them either backing in or pulling into the site and still utilizing this loading area, but then probably having to do a similar thing depending on the amount of vehicular traffic and space available on property, depending on when they're doing their deliveries. We looked at a lot of different options as far as how to get trucks in and out of here while still, hitting the other goals of trying to provide more queuing space and improve vehicular and pedestrian safety. And this is kind of the best layout that we could come up with. And in addition to the loading space that we're requesting there, we'd be relocating and enclosing the dumpster, trash and recycling dumpsters into that darker shaded box there for easy accessibility for the trucks that pick up the garbage and recycling, and then adding more parking on the south side there. That would mainly be employee parking on that far end, and then we'd have some more dedicated parking along, that area there for customers. The overall parking, although I think is it just at the maximum that we're allowed based on the zoning requirements, I think is it's not significantly more than it is there now, but as an improvement from a layout and functionality standpoint, given the tightness of that site right now. Moving on to the staff comments and our conversations with Department of Public Works. I believe the city arborist has reviewed the landscaping plan and has signed off on the species where we've selected like an autumn blaze maple. There'll be ultimately 5 trees along the front, those 3, one on the south side of the entrance and one more there, that we felt were nice street trees, provided some aesthetic break between the parking areas and the street, but at the same time doesn't really have lower lying branches to impact sight distances. We did note, Meredith, the arborist request to change some notes on those details with regards to the removal of the burlap bag, and we have no issue making those changes as part of the revised or final plan set that gets submitted to the city for approval. Moving on to the lighting, we are proposing some minor changes to the site lighting. namely relocating one light that currently sits between the two properties on a fence line. We relocate that light pole to just the north side of the dumpster enclosure because there's kind of a crosswalk there, or painted access point along the kind of connecting the dumpster enclosure to the building, where we envision pedestrians utilizing that cross-hatched area as pedestrian access. So we'd have a light there, and then 2 lights in the south parking area, strictly as a security and safety measure. We did note also in the staff notes that there was a concern about the color temperature, making it a warmer light color temperature in the 3,000 Kelvin range, which again, I've talked over with the applicant, and they're comfortable revising not only the proposed light fixtures, but also updating the existing light pole on site with that same light fixture to be compliant. And I believe if we agreed to the terms, the site lighting would predominantly be in as proposed in conformance with the city regulations as it regards to lighting. And then I think the last thing that came up from a comment from city staff or the public works was really relates to the line striping on Route 2. You can kind of see portions of it now. The line striping shown on Route 2 on this plan has been updated based on site survey and the new Route 2 repaving efforts that were just done last summer. So right now there's essentially 3 lanes on Route 2 here, and we're right at a point where we're the middle lane transitions from being 2 lanes northbound to 2 lanes southbound. And there's a comment from Public Works because of the relocation of our curb cut. They'd like us to see a shift in that line striping so that the 2 lanes northbound started a little sooner, so that there'd be at the access point to the relocated curb cut, even though there's a curb cut there now, because it'd be used so heavily, or theoretically more use, that we'd essentially stretch and shift the 2 lanes, the transition a little further south. Which we've reviewed out in the site on property on Route 2. I don't think there's any other implications or ramifications from that. I've talked over the applicant. Again, they're comfortable. The city has made the gesture of providing that restriping plan if the applicant was willing to implement it or pay for the cost of grinding out and restriping a portion of this. And I think it amounts to maybe, I'm guessing probably 100 to 150 feet of restriping potentially in this new curb cut area, but they're amenable to that, and we don't see any issue with it and think it makes sense as well. So sorry for the long-windedness, but I don't think there's any other really changes. Utilities, size of the building, employees, none of that's changing. It's really just to improve parking and functionality of the site. So I will now turn it back over to the board with any questions.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And take care of some of the easier ones first. I think it's overall it's seems like we have an area that everyone knows has got some congestion. And I think the goal here is an improvement. It's very clear in every way, shape, or form. Just as is on the top of my mind. So Alec had suggested he made the root ball recommendation. Did he have any recommendations about as far as like excavation of soil or any like subsurface work for the trees?
I don't recall seeing any notes on that, Mr. Chair, but I do note that our detail we have a tree planting detail within the plan set that does call for certain depth and material of sub-base material. So we're not just putting a root ball in gravel or pavement. So there's a certain amount of soil expectation there. So we can, theoretically assume some mature trees maintain their health for the foreseeable future.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And I guess it'd be good to get like you have a general idea of as far as the tractor trailer delivery versus the box truck delivery. It seems like the tractor trailer is not something that happens every time.
Yeah, no, it's twice a week. It comes
The tractor trailer comes twice a week,
Yeah,
and then the box.
Service every Dunkin' Donuts state
it does. Yeah,
where they need.
yeah.
They should change them over at the board.
And then is there additional box truck deliveries throughout the week, or?
Yeah, usually the donuts, our donuts come from Shelburne, so, but that's usually done like at midnight,
I got you.
late night. So
Okay.
that's really the only, is there any other? Yeah,
And our compost.
yeah, compost.
And
box,
then
sure.
trash, but that's early morning, like
Yep.
before 6 a.m. So not enough to impact anything really.
Okay, so one issue flagged in the staff report was the distance of the curb cut to the driveway on the south, being 30 feet. Seems like the configuration here, we're making a significant improvement, and I would agree with the staff report. I don't think it seems to be a big issue. It's,
As the neighbor weighed in, I kept on looking for something from the neighbor.
Oh, we got no neighbor comments. Everybody got mailed out letters with the public hearing notices, but we didn't have any public comment.
Actually, we met with the neighbor today, so I actually brought him over the plan, and so he was good with it.
Good.
He was coming over actually to talk to us because he was having some, he said there was some issues. He thought we already owned the property, some issues with some transients, like sleeping behind the building, and if it was okay for him to call the police, so.
If I recall, that house is set back.
Yes, it is.
Literal.
Yeah.
It's not good.
And for what it's worth, just to follow up on that response to that comment, we did measure the distance from the throat of the south edge of the new proposed curb cut to the north end of the existing curb cut, and we get about 31.7 feet, which I believe is greater than 30 feet that DPW was looking for. And also note that we're actually pulling the curb cut in on the south side there in 10 feet because it's about 22 feet now. The way the gravel, it's kind of a very funky configuration on that, that auto repair shop. There's actually a gravel parking area to the south of that building or southeast of that building that it has a curb cut that kind of just blends in with, because right now the curb cut for that auto repair is almost really the whole width of the frontage. We calling it two separate ones because there's kind of in and out the way they were parking cars, but the way the grading works there, it's all pretty open. But anyway, I do think we meet the intent of DPW's comments there.
alrighty. So, yeah, so now the big question, the regulations indicate that the loading zones are supposed to be, in the back of the building. I think what we've all seen here, there's not a way to do that. The loading zone is not currently at the back of the building. There's no other way to do it, and I'm okay with approving that. Anyone else have any ideas?
I have some questions that aren't about the loading zone. I mean, I think there's nothing, what's being proposed for a loading zone is better than what has been happening when you go out at 8 o'clock in the morning and there's cars queued up on Route 2, or the 18-wheeler is across 3 lanes. So there's no question that that's an improvement. I do have 2 questions though. One has to do with, which was raised in the staff report, a tree buffer that would extend between the loading zone and the sidewalk. Now, and on the, I don't know what they're called on the diagrams. That's that's like a pullout for the truck, right?
Yeah.
It's made in.
Yeah. So the thought process there a little bit was, where in order to accommodate that loading zone without impacting the queuing capacity of the drive-through there, we only end up with about 4 feet of width of green space between that loading zone and the edge of the sidewalk in the right of way. And only about 1.5 feet of that is actually on property as opposed to being in the right of way. So we just had some concerns about the viability of anything actually taking there and staying. That kind of crosshatch area is the area we're looking to reclaim. And so we've got about 1.5 feet on property and 2.5 feet within the right of way, with that darker dash line being the approximate property line in this area. So that's why we kind of focus. And then on top of that is understanding that that's also the section of frontage of Route 2 where you are looking at the Dunkin' Donuts building, the signage, the outdoor patio area with some landscaping that's in front of the building and whatnot. And so we didn't want to necessarily do anything to impede the view of the building. And so we focused our landscaping efforts in the area that was going to potentially screen the proposed parking area. I don't think we're necessarily against adding something additional landscaping in the form of maybe some small grasses or bushes there. We just have some concern given the lack of width between pavement and concrete sidewalk, what would potentially last there long term.
I hear you. I hear you. It's also, though, heat island, I think is what they call it. I mean, walking along that sidewalk is brutal.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of your traffic is pedestrian. I mean,
Yeah.
so anything that can mitigate that would be a plus. I mean, a tiny plus. But a
Yeah.
plus. And it could be tall grasses, it could be pampas grass or something that, you know, grows 5 feet, wouldn't impede the sign or recognizing the building. I mean, I don't know what it might be, but something
Okay.
at least to put up for discussion. And the second thing has to do with the pedestrian access, which is cross-hashed across the two, what are now the two properties from the new garbage area to the building. I hadn't realized when I first looked at this that the 10 parking spaces on the old Carabao Golf side were primarily for employees. I thought they would also be for customers. What's the material of that? Is that just painted tarmac, or is that going to be, you know, like brick or something that indicates it's really meant for pedestrians?
Yeah, I believe the intent is everything you see in light gray on the plan there would be pavement and either full new construction pavement, or I believe the intent is also for the existing pavement around the Dunkin' Donuts to be shimmed and overlaid. So the end product here will be a full new pavement layer across both sites in total, with that cross-hatched area that Emeritus is highlighting right now being a white painted crosswalk on top of the pavement. And yeah, the same thing. Right now, the south side of the existing Dunkin' Donuts building is hatched off there too. That's really just to make sure cars don't park there. And that would probably be maintained because we still don't want vehicles, thinking they can park there, understanding that there's cars coming out of the drive-through and going right around that corner. So the goal is to just really delineate and designate a pedestrian safe area from those 6 parking spots that could be used by clients or customers, and direct access to the front door of the Dunkin' Donuts, and knowing that's there. And then at the same time, we've also designated our ADA compliant parking space adjacent to that crosswalk area, so that they have that freedom on the side to comply with the ADA requirements.
And so presumably that painting that indicates it's a pedestrian zone will be updated on a regular basis. It
Yeah,
has
we
a
do.
habit of
We do seasonally.
washing out.
Yeah.
Any other board members have any follow-up to Alex's comments? Joe, you got anything?
Nope, not at this time.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think the shade is a valid point. I think the grand scheme of things, we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 new, full-size trees at some point. Five
Right,
new.
4 of them along the sidewalk.
4 along the sidewalk, yeah.
Back.
A significant improvement from the current situation when you look all the way down Berlin Street.
Right.
So we're making progress for sure.
We'll have little signs.
Um,
If you want
Meredith,
to
yes?
go south.
You could always sort of give them the option and the conditions to have that be to have some perennial beds in there. And if it's an optional thing, then if they can do it and find something that would grow there well, perennial or annual beds. But it doesn't have to be a requirement. But that way, if they add them in, it's not needing to come back to me for another zoning permit because they've changed the landscaping.
Interesting.
Because there's one
that
little
makes sense.
corner there where there's a little more space, but it's near a tree, so you don't
Yeah.
want to put another shrub there and impede.
Yeah.
impinge on the tree's ability to get a good root
Right.
system going, but you could put perennials or annuals there.
Right.
Yeah.
That would add a little bit more screening if it's something a little taller.
On the principle of reducing
not what I initially-
unnecessary bureaucracy, we could put it in as a possibility.
You can put it in as an
And if you
option.
could figure out a way
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make it a shade tree and keep the building exposed, that would be.
Yeah, but that gives them a little option without having to get another
That sounds good.
permit.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to cause trouble that way. I mean, there's no
Yep.
point to that. And if by some miracle that pedestrian crosswalk turns into brick as you're laying it,
That would just be an administrative amendment without another permit. Not a substantial change.
Lighting, um. Any proposed changes to lighting?
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
there I saw the cut sheets in here. Oh, yeah.
Well, we already talked about the temperature of the lights, but that one light height.
Yep.
Doesn't meet the setbacks. I think it's approvable, but
Right.
it's one of those funky ones.
I was confused on that of how the light is part of the setbacks.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Hmm.
There's a point in here around how the lighting is being added for customer safety. Can you remind us what the hours are for, hours of operation?
Oh, 5 AM to 8 PM.
8 PM.
yeah.
Okay.
Just one other quick thought, Meredith, as I believe when you're referring to the light pole non-conforming, that you're talking about the new one on the far south end with the 4 parking spaces. Is that correct?
Yeah, because of the spacing from the property line, technically I don't think it complies, but
Right.
it's also one of those, you got to have it where you need it for security, for staff and for night deliveries.
And one thing I'll just point out, if it helps the situation any, is that there's a pretty significant grade change from where this light pole base is going to be installed to even where that driveway is on the south. There's not a residential house or anything directly adjacent to this. It's actually a longer driveway that goes to the southwest, and there's about 4 or 5 feet of grade change there right off the bat. So even though we're calling for, I think, 20-foot pole, it's really going to be like 15 or 16 feet above that driveway grade. Again, I realize I'm just arguing maybe to argue, but it's just something to factor in as far as, I understand the concept being you want the height of light pole to be at least equivalent to the horizontal setback from the property line, I think is the intent of the rule, but it's just tough here when we're trying to create as much queuing space as we can on the site. That's all.
In that light, or maybe it is proposed to be shielded, so it's only going,
Yeah, all the light fixtures are LED downcasting, fully shielded light fixtures.
but it's shielded. Meredith, go ahead.
Sorry, the setback situation, I
Yeah.
think is more of in case the light pole falls, it doesn't land on someone else's property,
Yeah.
fence, house, person, is what that setback has to do with, is that's a safety thing more than a light pollution issue. But, hold on one second, I can pull up a Google Maps street view of that too.
Yeah, I think that is.
Sorry, give me just a second because it's harder on one little bitty screen to do all these things. All right, so here's the back of the existing garage building. And this is the neighbor property, and it goes right up the hill. So the light gonna be somewhere around where the back of the garage is right now?
It's kind of very close to that front corner. Yeah, where you see the CMU kind of blocks and that red roof. It's near the corner. The light pole base would be near that corner.
Yeah, it'd be about here. So
Yep.
it'll end up, if it falls, it sort of gets propped up on this bank here.
Right.
The known unknowns.
Yeah.
The unknown.
Exactly.
Well, falling light poles. I never thought of it in this setback. It is setback.
And I
You got
swear,
insurance? You got insurance for that, Martin?
I hope
it's one of those items where it's not something that pops up in my head either when I'm first going through an application until I get to a staff report where I'm having to go through
Yeah.
every single line and I go, oh.
It doesn't sound like we have a whole lot of ability to waive it. I mean, it's pretty clear, it's like the idea is that we've got our what, 10% potentially.
If you're talking about a setback. Yeah, you could
this
do
is-
that. I hadn't considered that waiver. There is for dimensional. Hold on, let me go back to the regs. I don't really go into the detail on that one.
the setback's supposed to be 25 feet.
I mean, there's also I don't know what kind of safety codes apply for the amount of lighting that they need there for the parking lot that would be outside of zoning.
Yeah.
Right? So if there's federal and state security requirements.
I mean, I can't say this. I mean, if it became a deal breaker or a specific issue with the board, I mean, we could relocate that light to the southwest side of those 4 parking spaces and then turn it 90 degrees. So it's kind of going out over those 4 spaces from the southwest. And at the same time, we would probably then take the next light over those 6 parking spaces and maybe shift it 1 space left, and kind of redistribute the light from that perspective. If we thought if we thought we couldn't get a waiver or a sign off on having that light pole there. Alternatively, we could also drop the height down on that light pole to a level that, again, it wouldn't have quite the same effect, but if we got that up to 10, 12 feet or something like that, could probably still provide enough illumination level to feel safe over those, because we're only talking about 4 parking spaces here. It's not a huge area. So we could call out that light pole specific to be just a little shorter than the rest, if that's something the board would entertain.
Not a huge risk. To this.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just, where the board has discretion versus where it doesn't.
Right.
So there is a, in section 3002, board may modify any dimensional standards in these regulations. Doesn't say provision, it says regulations, by not more than 10%.
Yeah.
So there is a 10% waiver option, which would apply to this kind of setback. As well as having that light pole maybe be a little bit shorter. You can get there to both of those. So that could be a condition of approval. I don't know. Do you know what that would get us to, Jeff?
Well, so the light pole base is shown right now is just over 10 feet from the property line. I guess it depends on how you want to calculate that 10% waiver.
Yeah.
You're right. You can go down or up depending on how you want to look at that. I mean,
Thinking more about it, it's like 10% doesn't really do too much because it's more of the height of the pole and how far it is from the
Right.
property line, regardless of what the setback is. It seemed like your proposal where you were talking about, you got that tree in the south west corner there. Seems like both the light and the tree could find a happy place near each other.
yeah, I mean, again, so if we center that light pole on that, the parking space that has the 4 circled around it, Meredith, and then rotate it at 90 degrees, Yeah, and sent a light towards Route 2 for those 4 parking spaces. That pole base, that would be over 20 feet from the property line, and accomplish that same goal. And then again, that next light pole to the northwest, at that point, I might shift that, yeah, to there, just to kind of equally distribute the light in that area. I don't know what DeMartin's thoughts are on that. I mean, I think it
Yeah,
generally.
for some reason, I think we had that light originally. That one we're saying to move there.
Yeah.
We might have already had it there originally, so.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's
it's
again,
fine.
it's
That'll
not
work.
quite as aesthetically pleasing and equally spaced, but again, I think for the purposes of lighting this parking area up for the few hours in the morning and night that you need it, I don't think it's going to be an issue necessarily. Would that satisfy the board's concerns about this if we were to have the final plan reflect those changes?
That's a much easier solution than 10% waivers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I think I'm good, but just to clarify, when it comes to the paint striping of Berlin Street, is that something that we would just condition you to work with Public Works on coming up with a plan for? So we don't have that specifically in here.
I think, and I'll let Meredith weigh in on this. I mean, as based on the conversations we've had with Corey and email correspondence with him and Meredith, as it's been explained to me, is that the Department of Public Works is happy to provide a new line striping plan for this section of Route 2 if DeMartin is comfortable on including the cost of that restriping within the construction budget for this project, which I believe he's willing to do. So I would imagine a condition could just be that, the line striping efforts on Route 2 as required by the city Department of Public Works are, incorporated into this project and need to be completed in conjunction with any kind of CO at the end of the project.
Isn't that included in the supporting and supplemental materials that are already part of the documentation for the
Yeah,
project?
so it would be a finding, you can just do it as a finding of fact that that is the plan. And
Got it.
then, if it doesn't happen, violation.
Perfect. Yeah. Sound good?
Yes. So the only question left is whether we want to put in the possibility of landscaping as a future in front of the loading area, which is left. Just as an advisory or. It's a, if.
It's an option.
It's an option without making it a necessity. That if you can figure out a way to do it,
Do something, sure.
that would be nice. If it doesn't work out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be language on the landscaping and then the lighting change.
As long as the board's, I mean, I don't know if you want to have the condition I suggested about the demolition or not. Doesn't have to be, but I thought it made sense.
That's also in supplemental. The repair shop building itself, I don't know, but all the hazard stuff is documented as part of the application.
Well, the bottom line is that the site plan will be more functional than it is now. So it's an improvement.
Yeah.
May not be the improvement we want, but it's definitely an improvement.
Improvement we want would probably also include some changes to the road. So.
That's a never ending discussion.
I want to
We could just get lost on that.
that. Take the Berlin exit and we can build it all together.
There you go, let's get
Just have box trucks in town. You wanna go all the way to Maine? Don't come through River Street.
All right. Well, I'll accept a motion. However, once folks want to proceed here.
Alex, would you like to do the motion? You have the landscape concept.
I have notes on the two added
Okay.
things, if whoever wants this, I have some notes.
I don't
Basic.
think I've ever done one of these motions. Um,
Time like
I
the present.
I move to grant the request for minor site plan approval with a waiver to the loading area location requirements, allowing a loading zone in the front yard as presented in application number Z 2024-0050 and supporting and supplemental materials, subject to the following conditions of approval. 1, demolition of the auto repair shop shall comply with the deadlines and hazard prevention requirements of section 3004.D A through D. 2, the pole lights on the south shall be shifted to comply with setback requirements. And 3, the owners shall have an option, should they so choose, to plant additional screening material to screen the loading zone from the sidewalk.
That's good.
Second.
Motion by Alex and a second by Catherine, to approve with conditions. Kevin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alex, how do you vote?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And Rob votes yes. That is unanimously approved, with conditions.
You're good to go.
Okay, great.
Well, not
Thanks.
quite.
No, not quite. There is a
There'll be a written decision, and because none of these were prior to permit issuance conditions, the permit will get issued with the decision. Because mail has been iffy and you guys are nearby, do you want me to email you when those are ready to be picked up?
Yeah, sure. That's easy
Okay.
enough.
Cause yeah, mail, getting it out and then back in is a little crazy sometimes.
And it's still a 30-day
Yep.
appeal process.
And there's a 30-day appeal process,
Mhm.
so. Everybody, we didn't have any comments, so I can't imagine there'll be much, but you'll get the blue notice card to put in the window and, but it's pretty good.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Must have been a stroke of luck, that property coming good.
Yeah. It's got a long history for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for your time tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Michael, and I think Eric was on for a little bit too.
Yes, I'll pop it there.
How much?
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, thank you very
All right.
much.
Okay, have a
And
good night.
we do have our other applicant on.
Oh, we do?
Yep, Jamie came on while we were in process, so,
Okay.
Jamie, I'm gonna, change your
Must be I-
name on here so that, people know who you are.
There we are.
Did it say John?
Or John, yep.
That's my legal name.
So you'd rather have it John on here?
No, Jamie's my
Okay.
nickname.
Okay. Well, they're both on the application and the packet, so we're good.
Alrighty, we will move on to the 14 Vine Street application for a 2-parcel subdivision. Jamie is going to be speaking. Anyone else on the Zoom going to be speaking? Looks like no, just Jamie and the board.
Yes.
Okay, we'll just swear you in here. All those interested in providing testimony on this application, would you please raise your right hand to be sworn in as a witness? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Great, thank you. Okay, Meredith, you want to just give a brief update? I know we did this at sketch plan, not a lot has changed, but we'll refresh ourselves of where we're at.
So it's a 2-parcel infill subdivision with the potential for New development on what will be a vacant parcel. There's a shared driveway, so, there's a, access easement shown on the plat. So for that part to actually, become effective, an access easement will need to be recorded in the land records as well as the subdivision, permit and plat. But this one's, this one's not contentious. They're not moving anything. It all fits in. So I didn't require the actual language of that easement in the, application, especially because it doesn't, we're not having to deal with like, utility easements, whereas other times we've had that issue as well. But it's pretty much the same as it was before, but we have, clearer application materials with the separate site plan versus the, draft plat. It's changed, and they did widen the showing on the site plan, the curb cut, so it shows that it can comply if, you end up needing a commercial driveway in the future, once the actual future development is proposed. But there's no requirement that get built anytime soon, because there's no application to actually build anything on the vacant parcel.
And the plat gets registered in the land records after we approve it.
Yep, they have 180 days after the, permit is issued to record the final subdivision plat.
And it never expires once it's recorded.
Correct. Once it's recorded, it doesn't expire.
All right, Jamie, you want to give us this overview from your standpoint? What's changed in sketch plan? Any major points?
I think there were just a couple things that you had asked for me to clarify or modify, which I did with Rick Bell, the surveyor, and it's been a few weeks. I don't exactly remember all of them, but I'm sure that we did everything that you asked, and yeah, I'm just hoping that that's what you guys find.
Okay. I guess there were two major things we talked about. One was the access easement, and just which is shown on the plat here. I think it was before, but just making sure that you understand the process for just getting the easement memorialized in the land records. So the actual easement language,
Yeah.
recorded deed, clearly giving the rights to both lots as
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
Yep. And then we had a couple, I guess, comments. One was we're gonna remove the proposed building from the plat. And I think we tend, Meredith, setbacks aren't something we usually show on the recorded plat. But
We have language in our regulations that mention that setbacks on a plat are fine. It doesn't actually mean anything because it all depends on when a proposal is
Right.
filed. I think it's fine to have that on there because it helps
Yep.
clarify a potential building envelope at the time
Sure.
of recording.
Yep. Okay. So that's no issue. And then I guess I had one question of whether we need to note on the plat of its location in the river hazard area. I know it's like, that we don't have to show the line or anything like that, but just
Well, so we've had some, so
it's different.
if you're in the floodway or if you're in the have river corridor, those definitely have to show. Because the Loma is getting recorded. Or not recorded, but the Loma is recorded and it's part of the application. That is giving us, clarity on the existing house. Hold on one second. Let me pull up a map. Because I think isn't the whole parcel is in.
Yeah, the whole parcel.
And so there's no line to show.
No.
Hold on one second. Because I know if it's floodway or river corridor, those lines should show, especially because of recent legislation.
Right.
Sorry. And so it's going slow.
So the structure is not in the floodway?
Well,
Am I
no,
reading
well,
this right?
so the structure, because of the Loma, FEMA has determined that the structure is elevated above the base flood elevation. So it is not considered, it is considered to be outside of the jurisdiction of our river hazard regulations.
Okay.
Okay, the building itself. Oh, there actually is a floodplain line on the corner. So I'll share this, hold on, so that Jamie can see too. And what I'm gonna probably do is just double check my river hazard regulations on that one. It's fun learning on the fly.
Yeah.
I've got another one that will be coming before you guys where they do have to show the river corridor line and the floodway line. Those are different and higher risk than just the river hazard. So there is a line right there where there's one little corner that's outside of the floodplain, or what we call the river hazard zone. So give me a second. I'm gonna pull up. Take a quick peek at there's a whole section in my river hazard bylaws on subdivision.
How did that property, whether
Oh, you're asking Jamie? Just pull your microphone forward so he can hear you. Ask Jamie.
Jamie,
Yes.
what kind of outcome did you have with the flooding last summer on those properties?
I don't think anything in the meadow got flooded except down by the four-way stop sign down there.
Spring Street.
Spring and Elm?
Yeah, I think that was the extent. I don't even know. I think that's where the water stopped. We did have some sewer backup issues in some of the people's basements.
Right.
That had like open sewers type situations, but yeah, we were, I think pretty much all of the meadow was spared. It pretty much started right at Spring Street, and then that seemed to have been the line, like right at the four corners there.
Okay, well, good, thank you.
So specifically floodway and river corridor lines need to be noted because you have to have enough land on a parcel that's being created to have sufficient areas outside of those locations that is suitable for development.
Right.
But just being in the floodplain, because there it's easier to develop. You just have to elevate the new structures. You don't have to worry about the river moving and eroding underneath, and you don't have to worry about the like higher intensity water, which is what the floodway, and not blocking that. Like in the floodway, you can't fill, you can't make it so that water raises other places. So that's why those two areas are a very specific concern. Neither of those have to be here. So there's gonna be I'll be issuing a separate river hazard permit for the subdivision. So those will all be recorded together in the same place. So they'll see that there's a river hazard permit and a subdivision permit next to each other.
Right. Cool.
That was my only concern, actually, that suppose nothing happens for 5 or 6 years and then somebody comes into it, wants to buy the second property. It shouldn't be hard for them to find out.
Yep. it's that there is for every subdivision that is in the floodplain, which covers floodway and river corridor, all need a river hazard permit. Of course, we haven't done any of those until after Audra retired and after the flood, and now we're dealing with them. So it's been an interesting learning curve. But yes, those will have permits, those will get recorded at the same time. So that they're right next to each other in the records.
Okay. List here. We discussed the sketch plan briefly about overhead wires, utilities being overhead versus underground. We've got a provision in our regulations that sort of says subdivisions, they should be underground, but precedent of the board has indicated that that's really more for brand new subdivisions and not infill in new neighborhoods. I think that as we have in the staff report, we've got a screenshot of a bunch of overhead utilities right in the neighborhood. So it makes sense to do whatever above ground, underground, whatever utility company so chooses to do.
Okay.
And then as typical for this type of infill subdivision with landscaping and screening, we've sort of kicked that to the site plan, the development of the parcel versus doing it at the time of subdivision, not knowing exactly how things are going to be laid out and what may happen. So board members feel the same. And then, infill in the city traffic and, suitability for, public services. I think as we discussed it, sketch plan, if anything, this type of, activity is, very encouraged, rather than, a concern whether there's enough facilities or, whether it should not happen. Yeah, I don't, we pretty set at sketch plan. And the big things are the easement, and then the removal of the building and envelope, or not the building envelope, but the proposed 45 building that doesn't need to be on there. And I don't know, I'm still stuck on the on the river hazard thing. I guess we
President start having that on.
well, so I just so board members understand where I'm coming from. It's like it's newly required that anytime you buy a parcel, you're disclosed that it's in the flood area. It would just seem to make sense for us that we're creating a new lot, that the document that creates the new lot has it printed on that this is in the flood hazard area. We don't have to plot the line specifically. I think just a note just stating that the entire parcel falls or portion of the parcel falls, or however they want to do it. But I think it just makes sense for a standard for us to be requiring that.
But you're thinking that as a process change for DRB as opposed to a condition here.
I think we have I don't know. I would think we have the ability to say it's a condition. It's not incorrect information. I think it's just good use of judgment on our part.
As opposed to what Meredith suggested earlier, which is that the plat gets filed.
I think that's obviously sufficient, but as someone that has done land records researched and go around, ultimately, someone wants to buy this property, they get a copy of the map. It's like, okay, where's the boundary line? They see it, and they should have all the the critical information necessary in order to understand what the parcel is and what they can do with it.
So it could be something like a river hazard permit is filed alongside this plat. Or, I mean, what would it be if it's not our authority? I mean,
So it could be a note, right? One of the notes that says, just like you have other easements recorded or unrecorded may exist, somewhere in there, you also have a, as of the date of filing, this land, this parcel or these parcels, however you want to put it, this land includes, this plat includes lands that are covered by the special flood hazard area. Something like that.
Yep.
That just puts them on notice, because the other thing is, those boundaries can change.
That's what I was gonna say. It should say as,
Right, as of the time of
date.
recording, this, these lands include land that's within Montpelier special flood hazard area.
right now, that's on the plat itself?
I would do that as a note on the plat itself. If that's where you guys are going, I would do that as a note on the plat itself, so that even if somebody doesn't have the recorded permit or the decision, it's in another place as well. Cause it is true. Sometimes people, all they have is the plat that they were given when they bought the property, and the lawyers have everything else.
Yeah, but then the lawyers have.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
I did that in another life.
So that would be a different, condition, so you could do that in condition 2. And final plat before it is recorded, and a note shall be added acknowledging the lands include special flood hazard. Something along those lines.
And Rob, is that the kind of precedent that would suit you?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's,
Yeah, that can become just a sort of a standard condition, if it's not already on the plat, where like you will see one later where they've had to designate the floodway line and the river corridor line.
Yep.
And that way I know too.
Yeah.
Right? For future ones.
sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, we've got a couple conditions here. I guess just one added. Don't have any other questions?
I don't see Joe, so I don't think he has anything to add. Shake
Would,
your head no.
Gladly accept a motion.
Yeah, I could start a motion. I might need a
Okay.
reinforcement on the floodway language.
Yep, I just added it to condition 2.
Sounds good. So I'll make a motion to approve a 2-parcel subdivision at 14 Vine Street, including memorialization of a shared driveway and access easement as presented in application Z 2024-0043 and supporting and supplemental materials subject to the following conditions. Within 180 days of this decision, the applicant shall record the final survey plot in the Montpelier Land Records Office per the procedures detailed in 4405 of the zoning regs, including the locations of all applicable survey rods and markers. The proposed 30 by 40 building outline shall be removed from the final plat before it is recorded, and a note shall be added acknowledging that the land includes a special flood hazard area as of the date of this filing.
Yeah.
The access easement referenced in the final plat shall be memorialized in a document recorded in the city land records.
Second.
All right, the team today.
A motion by Catherine and a second by Alex. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, Evan? Evan votes yes. Alex? Alex, yes.
Yes.
Catherine's yes. Joe?
Yes.
Alrighty, Rob, chair votes yes. Unanimously approved with conditions.
Awesome. Okay, Jamie, I will
Great.
be working on the decision as
Okay.
soon as the, because none of these were, again, no before permit conditions, when the decision's drafted and signed, we'll have that in the permit for you.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there's some conditions on what that final plat needs to look like. So there'll be a few tweaks that Rick will need to make, but you should be able to move
Okay.
forward promptly. I will let you know when those are ready.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yep.
I lost my copy of the minutes in my.
Here. I think I even have a spare. If you make edits, I'm gonna need it back.
Trying to recall the last meeting. It was so long
Yeah.
ago.
I had a revision to the minutes. Are we already there?
Yes.
Yep.
There's a reference to 1 PM. That should be 1 AM.
That was the last.
Yeah.
The first page or the second page? Oh, okay.
You know,
Yep.
I want to
thank you.
protect the New Year's Eve celebration
Yeah.
and be accurate, obviously. So.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes with that change.
Catherine?
I have to confess, I never found them.
Here, you want to take a look?
So
But
sorry.
they may be there after the end of all those staff reports, but I never.
I don't know where how there. It's so weird. Every once in a while, the system just sort of freaks out on us. That was a new one, though.
I could kind of hear you guys. It says it looks like it's just a typo before the 1 p.m. It says 4 Saturday nights per year instead of year.
Oh, the year is misspelled?
Just it's missing the Y.
Oh. Okay, so two typos.
Don't trust spell check.
Also needing to remind myself, even though it's paper that then gets thrown away, I have to print it out when I visit.
Yeah. All right, so we have a motion with 2 amendments, a spelling and a time change. Is there a second? Motion by Catherine, second by Kevin. All those in favor say aye.
I
Great.
Thank you.
Are you ready for motion?
We are.
That we adjourn.
Second, yes.
Motion to adjourn. Meeting's adjourned unanimously. Thank you.
Energetic about this?